so loud. Okay, my name is Sydney. As Ellie and Audra said, I'm a junior at Elkhorn High School, and I have the amazing opportunity to kick off this student-led series called Made for More. And I've been going to YU for about 3 years now, since I'm a junior, and I cannot explain to you guys how long I have dreamed of doing this. I remember sitting where you guys are and looking up here at the students that got to do this and thinking, I really want to do this. I answered Coleman's text in approximately 0.3 seconds when he asked me to do this, with zero doubts, because I knew that this was something I wanted to do so bad. And there's a lot that I could tell you about me right now, but I'm just going to stick to my school involvements because that's where you're going to see me most of the time. You're going to see me doing something for the school, at the school, or something related to school. So just to list them off, I'm a wrestling captain, vice president of student council, editor-in-chief of newspaper, president of pep club, and a member of Hope Squad and NHS. In other words, not only do I do a lot, but I am an absolute try-hard at everything I do. I go try hard no matter what the case is. I want to be the best at it. And I know from my experience in the Elkhorn Public School District that it pushes excellence to the max. And I'm sure there are others in the room that would not only agree with this, but I know that Gretna, OPS, Millard, Bennington, all the other schools that we have here would say that we're all alike in our push to be great. And because of that, we often find ourselves saying yes to all the band things, all the show choir things, all the sports things, and all the various clubs that we're involved in. We like to say yes to them. But what if we're saying yes to the wrong things? What if we're involving ourselves in things that we don't need to? And we're doing this series because we often try to find our purpose in high school in the things that we do, the things that we think we're best at, the things that we think that we were made for. But I believe, and the writers of Scripture tell us, that we were made for more than that. And for me, I often fall into the trap of thinking that I was made to excel in my school activities and academics. But specifically for now, I'm just going to talk about wrestling. Wrestling is something that I am very passionate about. I would say that I'm relatively a strong person. Just comparatively, I would say I'm pretty strong. You can see I have a picture up here that I'm going to put up. It's going to show you, I'd say, so I can look like I'm pretty strong, right? I mean, I would argue that, but I guess that's maybe biased. But I would say that I'm pretty strong. But I'll also be honest and tell you that strength is very subjective, because there's strength in wrestling, where you have to be able to strategically use parts of your body to more basically tackle another person and get points from it. And then there are other sports, like powerlifting, per se, where you just need brute strength. And I would like to introduce you guys to my best friend, Dakota. Give it up for Dakota. Honestly, yeah, give it up for Dakota. She is my ride or die in all circumstances, and she happens to be a powerlifter. And to be honest, she is likely stronger than every single person in this room. And that's not even an exaggeration. This is Dakota. Look at her. Oh my gosh. Oh my goodness. And just to brag about her a little more, Dakota has 15 national records, 4 unofficial world records, and countless state records. If you couldn't tell by the 1, 2, 3, 4, and more plates that she is currently deadlifting, I know I can't lift that, and I would beg that probably very little of you can either. But me and Dakota, we like to go to the gym together, because even though she's stronger than me, we still like to go. We like to go to Iron Heaven together. It's one of our favorite pastimes, and I am not kidding when I tell you guys that we quite literally spend more time unloading and reloading weights than we do actually lifting said weights. Because there's me over here with my, 1, 2 plates. I'm thinking, oh, this is great. This is going to be a really good workout. And then Dakota's like, yeah, this is really great for a warm-up. And then she proceeds to add on 3, 4, 5 more plates, and I'm like, okay, well, this isn't that funny anymore. We're spending more time unloading and reloading. This is such a true story. So bottom line, I feel very, very weak when I'm with Dakota. And I tell you this story to make it very clear to you that we all have weaknesses. There's no avoiding it. We're born into a sinful, imperfect world, And it's pretty easy to identify our physical weaknesses, like I just did. But there are also some weaknesses that go a little less under the radar. And for some of you, that might be, I don't know how to listen well. I struggle with my mental health. I don't know how to be a good support system for my friends. I don't discipline myself well. I'm not responsible. The list goes on. There are so many things that we are all struggling with, things that we would deem as what makes us weak. But my question for you is, when your weakness is exposed, where do you turn? Some of you might turn to relationships, addiction, sex, food, money, status, academic success. Again, the list goes on. But what if I told you that there was a better place to turn? And the reality is that as Christians, we weren't called to be perfect. We were called to give every single part of ourselves to God's plan and to allow Him to do what only He can do. And I think that we can all agree it's a lot easier to surrender to God the things that we're good at, the things that we don't need help with, because we've got them on our own. We got that on lock. We don't need help with that. So yeah, you can have that, whatever. And because of that, we like to hide our struggles and weaknesses. And we try to paint this perfect picture of ourselves to others, and sometimes even God. And this might work when it comes to fooling people on the outside, people in your school. But I can promise you that you can't fool yourself. And even more than that, you can't fool God. You can't fool the one who made you. But when we completely surrender our weakness, we get to experience His power and His love on a deeper level. And we get to see what He wants rather than what we want. Because if it were up to us, we would want to be completely perfect, the best at everything that we do. We'd want to have all of those national records, all the state titles, all of the awards. We would want to be perfect. But what if our weakness isn't a bad thing? And we're spending so much of our lives trying to fool others for absolutely no good reason. I need you guys to listen when I tell you that God doesn't want us to be perfect, because it is through our imperfections that He shows His power and His perfection. And we're going to go to a passage that Paul wrote to the church of Corinth in 2 Corinthians 12. And in verse 9 it says, "But he said to me, 'My grace is sufficient for you, for my power is made perfect in weakness. Therefore, I will boast all the more gladly about my weakness, so that Christ's power may rest on me.'" A little bit of context for this verse. Paul had told the church in Corinth that he was given a thorn in his side, otherwise known as a weakness, to keep him from becoming conceited or arrogant. And Paul had prayed over and over and over again that God would take away this weakness, that God would relieve him of this stress that has been put upon him. But God didn't want him to not have a weakness. He wanted him to practice giving it over to Him. In other words, God wanted him to spend less time grieving his weakness and more time surrendering his weakness. Because Youth United, we were made for more. But we can't experience the more if we are stuck on what makes us feel less. And verse 10 goes on to say, "That is why, for Christ's sake, I delight in weaknesses, in insults, in hardships, in persecutions, in difficulties. For when I am weak, then I am strong." Keep in mind here, it says, when I am weak. Not if I am weak, when I am weak. Because we are all weak. I'll admit it for you. We are all weak. And Paul happens to take this weakness thing to a whole different level. In verse 9, he says that he boasts in his weakness. And in verse 10, he said that he delights in his weakness. And I'm sure that probably none of us have ever said that. I know I haven't ever said that. But our weaknesses give us the opportunity to turn to Christ. And the more that we turn to Christ and practice that level of surrender, the more that we trust in Him to do what only He can do. And the more that we trust in Him in that, the more our relationship with Him builds, and the easier this process becomes. So we can try to put our weaknesses in the dark. But God, as the writers of Scripture say, is light. And if we are truly in God and are truly following Him like we say that we are, then we need to stop trying to hide things from Him. He is the creator, There is nothing that we could do to possibly surprise him because he made us. So you might be wondering, what's the risk of living in the dark? Why can't I stay where I'm at? I seem to be doing just fine. I don't notice anything too big in it yet. And I would tell you that not wanting to give up your weakness because you think that you can fix it is an issue of pride. And more than that, Satan works best in the dark. You are giving him a foothold when you try to keep your weaknesses from God, and it will drag you down. It will not let you experience the fullness of your relationship with Christ. It will drag you down. You can't sit on the fence. So, how can you make sure that you're getting this right? How can you live in the light as we talked about? And I want to preface by saying that for those of you who haven't put your faith in Jesus, that is your first step. Putting your faith in Jesus by asking him to be the forgiver of your sins and the leader of your life, that is your first step. Because you're not going to want to surrender your weaknesses, something so vulnerable to you, to someone that you haven't fully put your trust in. So if putting your faith in Jesus is something that you feel on your heart to do tonight, we're going to give you an opportunity to do that in just a little bit. But for all of you, whether you've put your faith in Jesus or not, whether you're new at this whole thing or you've been doing this for years, you are still able to acknowledge your weakness. Because as I said earlier, we all have them. But it's up to us to acknowledge that. And a good place to acknowledge your weakness is in your small group, which you're also going to get the chance to go to later. And I'm confident that my whole small group knows the best parts of me and the worst parts of me. Honestly, probably more the worst than the best. And because of our vulnerability, because we have real, raw, deep conversations every single week, that bond between us has grown, and we're able to grow in our faith together as a whole, which is a lot easier than trying to do this thing on your own. But for those of you who have put your faith in Jesus, who claim to be a follower of Christ, I have 3 steps for you that I want you to have on repeat in your minds. And I say on repeat because it's not something that you can do just once. Because right now you might be thinking of a weakness, but tomorrow or next week or next month, you might think you have a different weakness. You might have something appear in your life that you're like, yeah, I'm not that good at that. So you have to have this process on repeat. And the first step is to identify your weakness, because you can't change something that you don't see a problem with. You have to identify, I am weak. And then the second step is to surrender that weakness to God. Say, God, you can have it. Your will be done in my life. This is yours. This is not mine to carry. It's yours to carry. And then the third step is to allow God to use your weakness. And you might be confused on what this means, but it's pretty much just a continuation of the second step. Because it's real easy to say, God, you can have my weakness. And then tomorrow say, no, I want that back. I want that back. I actually prefer that that's in my hands because a situation just came up that I got to deal with. Once I deal with my situation, you can have it back. It's so easy to fall into that. But you have to remember that this is a process that is continuous. It's not just a one-time thing. You have to allow God to use your weaknesses, even if it's in situations that you know you're not comfortable with. And I feel pretty confident in my ability to speak on these steps because I am a living, breathing, walking example of these 3 steps working out. A major weakness of mine, I'll tell you, is my anxiety. And I'm not afraid to tell you guys that because of the transformation that God has done in my life thanks to my anxiety. And I have been in the lowest of lows because of it. And it has fed me lies upon lies upon lies. It has made me feel things that I wouldn't wish upon a single person. But I've now gone to therapy for over 5 years, and I've learned a lot about myself. I've learned that step 1. And I've learned how to cope with that step 1. I've learned how to turn step 1 into step 2. And now, because of all that, I get to tell other people about my anxiety, just like I'm doing right now. I get to tell all of you, yeah, I'm weak. I'll stand right here in front of you and tell you that I'm weak. Because its meaning has changed. And I can't pretend that I'm cured from my anxiety after surrendering it. I can't pretend that it doesn't show up, because it does. But like I said, its meaning has changed. It's more of a reason for my strength than something that will tear me down. It's living proof of what Paul means when he says, when I am weak, then I am strong. And some of us are going to have to verbalize this with others, and just like I did. And I believe that counseling and medication are things that God has given us in addition to our faith in him. Because no matter what you do with your weakness, he has to be at the center. So, I want to bring us back to where we started. When your weakness is exposed, where do you turn? And I really want you to think about that. Do you run to try and cover it up and fix it? Or do you surrender it to God, like we talked about? Because we are made for more. I can't stress it enough. We were made for more than the relationships, more than the addiction, more than the sex, food, money, status, academic success. We were made for more than anything you could possibly try to cover up your weakness with. And throughout this series, we're going to be continuing to break down what we were made for and what that means for our life. And one of the cool things that we're going to be doing is singing the same song. You might recognize it, you might guess it. It's called Made for More. And before we do that, I'd like to actually go over a couple of the lyrics in this song because I find it really important to have an idea of what you're singing about before you just start standing up, worshiping, and throwing your hands in the air and you don't know why. And so the first part I want to talk about is, I wasn't made to be tending a grave. And what this means is, stop putting your effort into perfecting a dead body that Jesus has set you free from. You were dead in your sin before you put your faith in Jesus. But after that salvation, you are alive. So why would you try and perfect that? Why would you be tending to your grave? And the second part of the chorus says, why would I make a bed in my shame when a fountain of grace is running my way? And I only have one thing to say about this. Stop being comfortable in your conviction. Run to the one running after you. Let's sing.